Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We will call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the McMinnville City Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The first item on the agenda is roll call.
All the board members are present, Mayor Chastain.
Thank you, Shirley. The next item on the agenda is consideration of minutes. Each member of the board should have received those in their agenda packet. If there be no additions, corrections, or deletions, I will dispense or ask for a motion to dispense with the minutes as read.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Everett Brock
Second.
and a second by Miss Sally Brock. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next is recognition of visitors. Are there any visitors?
I guess you heard from them.
Sounds like a yes.
They weren't mine for a change.
Somebody translate. Are there any visitors on the Zoom call that wish to address the board? Hearing none, we will move on to item 4, communications. There do not appear to be any. Shirley, were there any that came in late after the packets went out?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is petitions. There are no petitions. Item 6 is unfinished business. Do any members of the board have any unfinished business to discuss?
I have one thing, Ryle. Is Mr. Purtle on here?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that we need to do is to get the paperwork going for amending the hotel motel ordinance to include Airbnbs and other private things. We talked about that in the last meeting, and
Okay.
You may have already started it for all I know, so I don't know.
No, other bigger projects have gotten in the way, but we'll take it up at the next meeting.
Okay, fine.
Any other unfinished business to come before the board? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. Item 7A is consider the application for the Tennessee Healthy Built Environments Grant to fund Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Steve Harvey
I'll second that.
and a second by Ms. Rachel Kirby. Is there any discussion on this matter? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote, Shirley.
You want to do a voice vote or you want a roll call?
Since it's not a well, I guess it is a financial matter. I'd rather do a roll call vote just to cover our bases.
Okay. Everett Brock,
Yes.
Sally Brock,
Yes.
Stacy Harvey,
Yes.
Steve Harvey,
Yes.
Rachel Kirby,
Yes.
Zach Sutton,
Yes.
Mayor Chastain.
Yes, motion passes. Item 7B is the discussion regarding our meeting formats and schedule. Originally, under this section, Nolan and I were going to, I guess, discuss having one full meeting a month and then having a work session during what would be the second meeting of the month. And we have decided to not even discuss that at all. However, I would like the board to discuss and give their thoughts about meeting in person versus Zoom going forward. So let's just open it up and everybody kind of weigh in on that, and we'll decide whether we meet via Zoom or in person later this month and going forward.
I would much rather meet in person.
I second that. This is Stacy.
Okay.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah, we've got 10 people. I know that there's right now we're under the 10-man or 10-person quota per the governor, but we've got, if we take the 7 board members, the legal counsel, Nolan and Shirley, that gives us 10, and we could, everybody else could come in on Zoom or however, as could, visitors or that type of thing. But this is just so unwieldy. It really
Sure.
is.
No, I agree. Meeting via Zoom is not preferred. We just opted to do this just this one time, seeing as COVID's kind of at a fever pitch right now, and then just have everybody weigh in. So, I mean, what the governor has said is a recommendation. However, we're only doing this twice a month. If we do like we did back in December and meet, say, in the lobby where everyone is spread out, everybody's wearing masks, they're checking temperatures at the doors. We have all of the seats spread out. So we're taking, most of the precautions that they have. And if we're doing that, I just really don't see a problem with it. So if it's okay with everybody else, we'll just plan on meeting in person at City Hall on, I guess that's the 26th.
Are we going to have it sort of a split meeting where visitors would come in from the outside, or just seat everybody way apart?
I would just recommend doing it like last time. I recall, mid to late last year when we were trying to do the optional Zoom meetings, and it was just very difficult. I recall being in on one when I was sick and I couldn't hear anything and I just had to get off of it. So I think it would just be more convenient if everybody's agreeable to it, to just having the meeting open and we take the precautions that we do every other time people come in City Hall.
I guess I have a question. So are you going to allow an audience? Because, and I know this might apply for Steve too, is we're expecting grandchildren in February, and, to see that grandchild, I might have to quarantine. So I didn't know if maybe I could Zoom in if I do, or are you going to?
I mean, if we have to, we have to, that's okay. I mean, that's certainly your option. And the governor has given us, that discretion to do. So if that's what you're comfortable with, Rachel, I don't have a problem with it. So we'll just plan on meeting at City Hall, and then I'll get with Nolan and Scotty, and we'll talk about, setting up the Zoom stuff, and basically, I guess, having it optional like we did last time. Is that okay with everybody?
Sounds good to me.
Fine with me.
Say again.
I'm fine with it.
I'm good with it.
Okay. All right. We don't have to take a vote on that. So is there anything else to come under new business? Hearing none, we'll move on to resolutions. There are none. The next item on the agenda is ordinances. And we have ordinance number 1807, an ordinance to amend Title 14, Chapter 2 of the McMinnville Municipal Code, referred to as the zoning ordinance of McMinnville, Tennessee, by amending Chapter 2 entitled General Zoning Provisions and Chapter 5 entitled Specific District Regulations by changing Section 14-204.1 defining accessory apartment, inserting new section 14-507.3G, establishing guidelines for attached accessory apartments as a use permitted on appeal in C2 general commercial districts, to provide for a public hearing and to set the time for this ordinance to become effective. This is the second and final reading. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move.
We have a motion by Miss Sally Brock
I'll second it.
and a second by Miss Rachel Kirby. Is there any discussion on this matter?
Raw, I have something, and I spoke to it last time, and I spoke with Nolan about it. I think we texted about it on Monday. I just want to be sure that we have a procedure that is outlined for this, because this is going to be new. And I want to make sure that whatever we put out there for an application for permit, that would fall under this ordinance, that the inspection criteria and the inspection protocol is clearly outlined for people on the outset. I really don't want to see anything. If I have any influence in it, I don't want to see anything that's ambiguously worded. I want it black and white. I just think that we're going to be in better shape with people who have buildings that are already existing, that are going to be opening it up to inspection, that they clearly understand what's going to be inspected, period.
So I guess Nolan and Katie, to speak to that, if I have a commercial building and I'm going to be building an accessory apartment onto it, when codes comes to inspect it, are they going to be inspecting the existing building or just the new addition?
Well, I would say it's not always just black and white, but in general, you're just going to look at the addition. If there are mechanical systems that extend from the existing structure out to the new, you may take a look at those. But in general, I think we may have talked about it last time. If there's a use possibly that, if it's residential, butting up against a restaurant, you may need to look at putting a firewall in the existing. But beyond that, I don't see any need to go into the existing structure other than that.
Okay.
I like that personally. I like that, but I think that we should have some way to communicate our position as a codes enforcement entity, that this is what you will expect from us on your new structure. It will have to go to the 2015, 18 IRC, whatever the applicable code is. And I don't even know if we're on 18 yet or not, but whatever that applicable code is. And the only time we would need access to your existing structure for inspection purposes were if there were shared mechanical or plumbing or electrical systems. I really, and I don't want to cause a problem by this, but I just think that anytime we do something new, there's, for some reason in this area, there is a, okay, what are they not telling us type mentality. And I get hit with that a lot because I'm in the construction business. And I just think that if we deal with that on the up and up, right up front, that this is what you would expect. This is a brand new thing for us. I think if we have an inspection protocol, of what to expect when you're expecting type memo that goes with every permit application, I think it would save a lot of trouble later on.
I do think we have the bones or the beginnings of those things, and I think Katie is working to smooth those up, firm them up, and be ready to present those going forward. They've been ready. We use them as part of a software upgrade, and we just got to put them together so everyone knows. Katie, do you have any additional comments on that?
I was just going to say that, it's a good thought about, it's a new use. People may be very interested in it, and I would hate that, but clearly our standards are such that we want to be very clear about what it is that a new attached accessory apartment could look like in a commercial structure. So one thing we can do is to have kind of an open house on the topic, invite the public on in this case, it may be a Zoom call, but invite the public to attend, where we can walk them through the new use that's allowed in C2, help them to understand what the standards mean. And in addition to that, field any questions they may have about our permitting as well as enforcement procedures. So it may be that there are other questions or gray areas that we can help to clear up that we don't even know about. So that's certainly also something we can look at doing for this use, since it is, it's new. We have it in C1 already, but it's new to C2, and we wouldn't want people. We want people to really understand what they can do and what they can't do.
So to tag on to that, Katie, do you think the language of this policy sets the Board of Zoning Appeals up for success with clear objectives?
Yeah. So the Board of Zoning, to remind everyone how this works, this is a special exception use. So someone who owns a building in C2 today can't walk in tomorrow and get a building permit for it. They would actually have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, who would look at it and to double check that the location that they're proposing is appropriate for an accessory apartment in a commercial building. So they base their decision on the standards that you're looking at right now, as well as on 4 standards in the zoning code that are broader. They're meant to be broader, and they're specifically talking about like public safety impact, adverse impacts on surrounding properties and things of that nature. So I think these standards are clear enough to give the Board of Zoning Appeal a clear idea of what would work, what's going to meet these standards and what's not going to meet these standards, and help them to create an unbiased opinion on the matter.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on this matter? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote.
Sally Brock,
Yes.
Rachel Kirby,
Yes.
Everett Brock,
Aye.
Stacy Harvey,
Yes.
Steve Harvey,
Yes.
Zach Sutton,
Yes.
Mayor Chastain.
Yes, motion passes.
Thank you, everyone.
The next item on the agenda is departmental reports. I see several department heads on the Zoom roster. So we'll ask any of you to give reports on your respective departments now.
I know that Nathaniel Green has an update on the Center Street project. I have asked him to unmute.
Hey, everybody. I hope you had a good Christmas and New Year and all that, even into the circumstances. So congratulations to all the new board members. And something I wanted to talk to you about tonight is there's a section of the Center Street project that is between Center Street and Spring Street. It doesn't quite go to Spring Street, but it goes right behind a home that would be facing Spring Street. And that particular section of line was called out to be pipe burst by the contractor. And after much discussion between me and Ricky and Nolan, prior to them starting work on the project even, they being the contractor Morgan, was not confident in their ability to hit the particular grade that is required on that line. Now, the reason that we were replacing that section was because it was at a lesser grade than what the state of Tennessee requires for the size line that it was. However, pipe bursting it, which was the method that we had chosen to replace that line with the new line, would have actually put it on grade if of course they could do it and were 100% confident in their ability. And like I say, if the contractor is not confident in their ability, then that makes me shaky as to my confidence in them too. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you to consider, and it's not something that you have to make a decision on tonight, but for this particular project, we did have a special run of pipe. It's 24-inch ductile iron. The quotes that they've sent me say that it's class 56, but our specifications and the shop drawings I had said it was class 55, which would be the second strongest type of ductile iron pipe that they make. It's also lined specially with a lining called a 401 lining that makes it resistant to sewer gases. And the thing that I wanted you to think about or consider was the purchase of this excess pipe. So basically what I would be looking at would be the reduction of the overall contract price from right now we're at $789,000 right about. This section of line would have cost approximately $153,000 to put in. And since we're reducing that from the contract, this section of pipe, the pipe that they have is it's $201.48 a foot. But I would not recommend offering them that price for the pipe. I would recommend, because it is a special pipe and there is other pipe on the job that would make more sense for you to use in this situation, offering the lesser price of $160.44 per foot, which would be the price of that other pipe that we're using on the job. And the reason that I say that is eventually we're going to have to replace this line. It was not the problem section. It just made sense that since we're already there, that we try to replace it. We don't want to create a problem with our flow in the system. That's the reason I don't want to recommend them move forward trying to replace it in the way that they were going to, and then miss the elevations that they're supposed to hit and ultimately get into some type of battle with us over, not hitting that elevation and us not wanting to pay them. So, like I say, this is just for your consideration. You can tell me no, that you're not interested in purchasing the pipe, but pipe is one of those things, kind of like most building materials. It never gets any less expensive, and this was a special run of pipe. So they're going to have a hard time finding anything to do with it. And I think that it could be a good investment for the city for the future, because there will be areas that you could use this pipe in. Again, I said it's a 24-inch ductile iron line. It would be approximately 335 feet of line. If we were to look at the 160.44 per foot, that would be around $54,000, which would mean that our total reduction in contract price on this project, as it stands right now, and of course there will be some give and take with respect to unit item quantities, but that would still leave an overall reduction of around $100,000 in the total contract price. So like I say, that's just for consideration. If you do want to kick that to committee, I understand. If you want to tell me no, that you're not interested tonight, I understand that too. I just wanted to put it out there. We do have a couple of months before the contract's over, but I would expect this discussion to be part of a change order in the future.
Thank you, Nathaniel. Hey, Stacy, can you get with Ricky Morton about that and gauge his interest? And then if he wants to move forward with that, have Shirley put that down for a water and sewer meeting in 2 weeks.
Yes, I'll do that. Mr. Green, can I ask you a question just to be sure that I understand the kind of the surrounding circumstances here about this? I understand your proposal, all of that, but I want to be sure I understand the reason that we're not doing it. We're not doing it because we're not sure that we can hit the elevations. It was scheduled to be pipe burst, but that wasn't a sure bet. So do we have an Achilles heel over there by not replacing this section of pipe?
No, we don't. The issue is they came in and told me that they would definitely be off by 3 inches. And what that 3 inches is, that's the difference in the size of the diameter of the pipe from half of it. And I told them that that was unacceptable. And they said that that was within the tolerance that they were allowed by the international pipe bursting recommendations. When I told them that particular guidance document was not a party to our contract, they, I guess they were a little bit upset that I would say that, said they've always been paid for jobs no matter what happened. And I said, this is going to be a job that you don't get paid for if you don't hit the correct elevation. And at that point, they were upset. And I did give them the option, just full disclosure, I gave them the option of performing the project via open cut for the same price, because that would provide better installation and ultimately get the project the way that the city requires it. And they took time and said they thought about it, but ultimately they decided not to do that.
So I'm just and I believe me, I don't want to belabor the point, but I just want to be sure that, so we're not doing it because of an elevation discrepancy. They've decided that they don't want to excavate the area and use trench boxes, blah, 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 because of the weather. We know all that. But what about the condition of the pipe that's there that was scheduled to be replaced?
the condition of the pipe that's there that's scheduled to be replaced in that particular area from Center Street to the next manhole, there's nothing that we know of to be wrong with that particular pipe at this time. The only issue that we have with it is that it is, the reason that I wanted to have it replaced is that it is at an elevation that does not meet state standards. And like I say, eventually it will have to be replaced.
Well, might I, before we make this decision, I want to ask your opinion on if this is okay. So if this is uncalled for, please tell me. But if we're not sure of the condition of the pipe, and we're not sure if we're going to try to buy the pipe or do the change order or whatever, why don't we affirm the condition of the pipe with some type of an inspection, and then make a decision based upon what we know instead of what we hope to be so?
We have actually done that. We have done a TV inspection of the pipe, and the pipe for that section, like I say, the TV inspection was not the issue. It was the elevations between the two, correct. The elevation there is 0.08%. And what that means is that for that particular size line, an 18-inch size line, it actually has to be a higher percentage. I believe the number is 0.11, I think. That is 0.08. For a 24-inch line, 0.08 is perfect. That's what it should be for it if you were to look at the state regulations. And of course, I got the survey documentation from Moore Land Surveys. I had Michael Moore to go out and survey the manholes. We'll have him do it again before we finish out the project to make sure of where everything hit along the line. But yeah, that's the reasoning behind it. Once I had all those manholes hit, that section was the only section that I recall that did not meet the proper elevation, and that's the reason that I wanted to have it replaced with that larger line, was so that we would meet TDEC standards.
I understand that. I just wanted to be sure that I didn't miss. I've got ADD, I guess, like my kids, but I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss the fact that what it needed to be, that there was anything functionally wrong with that section. It was just purely elevation. It's evidently been working. It's flowing downhill. So, I get it. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss something there. We're going to have to replace it eventually due to state statute.
Well, what I would say is eventually we'll have to replace it due to age and condition, but just not now. Now, the section just prior to this line failed twice. And so it is about the same depth, and it is PVC. So you could assume that at some point in the future that you're going to have failures on that line too. And that's the reason at that depth that we would want to have a ductile iron line. Now, this class 55 that I'm speaking of, you don't necessarily have to have that. We could have a less expensive ductile iron line, but I would still, at that depth and at this point in time, I would install, this point in time being either now or in the future, whenever we do have the issue that necessitates the replacement, I would still replace it with ductile iron line due to the depth of the line, particularly.
Yeah, I understand that.
Now,
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, I do too. Go ahead, Steve. I'll do mine later.
Did I understand you to say that going to the ductile iron is a reduction in the contract amount?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
We are using ductile iron line currently. Yes.
So we're going from, this was going to be pipe burst before, and then we can't pipe burst it. So we got to dig it.
Well, no, sir. What I'm saying is we don't do anything to this section right now. The reason that I wanted to replace it while we were in here was that it made more sense that while we were we're replacing the manhole in Center Street. So while we're replacing that manhole, it makes sense to replace the lines that connect to it. That was the reason that we were doing, if there is an issue with that particular line. The issue that we have with this line is that at an 18-inch size line, at an 18-inch diameter line, it does not meet the correct correct slope to meet state standards. Now, through this area, you have more flow and more depth and can surcharge and things like that that would cause you to get the velocity required. That's the reason that in my discussions with Ricky and with Nolan too, that I've said, and also with my boss Jimmy, that we've said that there shouldn't be any issue with not replacing it at this time, particularly considering that the contractor and us could get into it over non-payment, particularly because I don't like paying people for not hitting the things that they say they're going to.
Nathaniel, this is Everett Brock.
Yes, sir.
The savings actually comes from them not completing the project, right?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. The other thing is, if going forward, when we do replace this pipe, are we going to be able to find somebody to do pipe bursting? Or will you assume that would probably have to be open trench to do it?
No, sir. I believe that you're going to have to open trench this at some point in the future. Yes, sir.
Okay. You don't think you're going to find anybody that's going to guarantee the right
No, sir. Not at this time. No, I
Okay.
don't. And they see Morgan actually did give us an estimated price. Right now, the pipe burst price is $475 a foot. The estimated price that they gave me for open cutting it for them to do it was $600 a foot. I believe that we can do it for cheaper than that, open cutting it, if we were to have somebody. That's another reason. Just looking out for the city, looking out for the, savings there, because it would be best for it to be open cut. But this is the situation that we're in now. And since it is a section that it has at this point, knock on wood, not failed. And the only issue that you have is an existing issue of not meeting the state standard for slope, which it was put in the late 1970s, I believe. So it could have been construction practices at the time. I don't think that anything sagged through there over time. I've not seen that in the videos that we've seen, but
yeah, it sounds like that we would probably do a good deal if we could get the pipe for the price that or close to the price that you mentioned, because eventually we're going to need that anyway, whether if it's open cut or whatever the situation is.
Yes, sir. And in fact, this would be a stronger pipe. It's a restrained joint ductile iron pipe, and if you could get it for the the $40 cheaper a foot, like I'm talking about, then I think that would be a good idea. And you have space over at 202 Bell Street to store it. It's not very much pipe. So, and I will give you the disclaimer that it can only be used in sewer settings, because it is that particular lining makes it not for use in drinking water. But you don't have 24-inch lines anyway. So
yeah, you've got it. We're going to have to use it, so let's get the best deal we can with it. And that's where Stacy and you guys can sit down and talk about that. But it sure seems like a no-brainer to try to get it anyway.
Okay, well, Rob, I'll reach out to Ricky tomorrow and see what we can do about getting together on that. And then Mr. Green, I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other department heads wish to address the board? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 11, announcements. Nolan, Tim, does anybody have any announcements for the board?
What about Hank?
None from me.
What was that?
How about Hank and his crew? We need to give them a big pat on the back.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, it was brought to my attention that the lights were being taken down, and we brought that to Hank, and they've agreed to keep them on through the end of January. So each year they will be turned on at the junior auxiliary
Christmas in the Park.
Christmas in the Park event. That's when they'll come on, and they'll be turned off at the end of January. So I went ahead and posted that schedule on our website so everyone knows what to expect. So
Yeah, I think Stacy had a good idea about that, about putting it on the website.
absolutely.
I think it's wonderful. Everybody loves them, and it's just nice.
And
Well-
I think last year we talked about leaving the white lights on trees along Main Street, and I believe Frank interrupt me if I'm incorrect, but we're gonna do that again this year. Anyone have any comments on that?
I would like the white lights, yes, downtown, and let the colors go. Is that what
Yeah.
you, after January, let the color, like the whites in the trees?
Yeah, just the whites along Main Street, I think is what we did last year.
I think that's very nice.
Hank had talked about taking some of the garland down. Do y'all see any problem with that?
I don't.
No,
I don't blame you. I would want to take the garland down and get that put away. I agree.
Yeah, because if he don't start taking some of it down, it'll kind of push him in his mowing season
Mhm.
and everything. So if he could get some of the garland down, it would help him out.
I don't see a problem with that.
just be
Okay.
sure to tell them that they did a great job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I sure will. Thank y'all very much.
Yeah, I think people come from all around to see Hank's work, and we're really proud of it.
It
Wonderful.
definitely does look nice.
Any other announcements?
I don't have an announcement, but I have a question.
Sure.
If I could ask it. Maybe it's not the right time, but if it's not, just tell me and we'll talk about it some other time. But, I followed a little bit about the Graves Pharmacy deal. What's going on with the Historic Zoning Commission and the Graves plight over there? Is there it seems that we're kind of at an impasse from what I understand. The Graves want it. They feel like they've done their job. They're within the regulations, but then we've got this impasse. I mean, does anybody know how that's gonna resolve? Because I don't really think that the Graves are gonna go away on that issue. Is there a time that, what's the process here going forward?
Well, and Nolan, do you want to speak, or Katie, or I will? I don't mind. That there's a meeting scheduled towards the end of January where they're going to try to reach some kind of compromise. The problem was, according to the historic zoning guidelines, and there was lots of discussion about internally lit, flashing lights, externally lit, things like that. But the bottom line is the top part of their sign is lit and it says Graves Pharmacy. The second section of the sign is rather large. It's a big sign, and it's going to be digital and have a message board, a digital message board. So that's kind of where the problem came. Some felt like it was within the guidelines. Some felt like it was not. In the meantime, and so it was tied. So in the meantime, another member was appointed to that historic zoning board, and that was kind of, in the last meeting, how we kind of left it was they were going to try to talk and compromise as to what that might look like. Everybody had different things that bothered them about it. So it kind of ended that way. And I think Katie was going to meet with them about how to compromise that out. We tried to say, just leave the top. And that was one compromise, that just leave the top that says Graves Pharmacy and don't put the digital sign underneath that advertises. It's a constant changing advertising sign. And some people felt like that did not comply with the historic zoning guidelines. There was a lot of input from the community as well on both sides.
Well, can I ask a question about that, Rachel?
Mhm.
And I'm not involved in that at all, other than, I'm very glad that they're restoring that building over there. And I just don't know how in the heck they got them to sell it to them, because I tried to buy it for 4 years and I couldn't get anybody to return my freaking phone call half the time.
I don't know about that, but everybody is super. And I think that's kind of part of the problem is, it's kind of two separate issues. I think everyone is thrilled at everything they're doing with the building. It's fantastic that they're coming downtown. But the impasse was about the digital sign only.
Well, and I understand, and this was my question, and this kind of goes back to what my statement was, or my question was earlier about the zoning, the ordinance change, is that from what I hear you saying, and what I understand from what you're saying, is that there's a different interpretation or opinion of the regulations between some historic zoning commission members and others. And one of the things that I've personally experienced many times in dealing with municipalities is that when you have statutes that are or ordinances that are purposely ambiguously worded, then it leaves too much up for the interpretation by the official, or in this case, by commission members. And do you think that based upon this impasse, that it's possible we need to look at these specifications and tighten them up a little bit to where it is a pass or fail, not so much of a personal opinion, because personal opinions lead to emotional thinking, and emotional thinking is not necessarily what we need to be dealing with when we're talking about regulations and or ordinances, in my opinion.
The problem is that time has passed and technology changed. That's part of the problem from when they were written as to now, is that technology changed as to the digital, the flashing, the, lit within, lit without. Yeah, and I think that they're working on that as far as clarifying those.
Okay, so that is something that is underway right now, that those historic zoning requirements or regulations are being reviewed right now and updated? Is there a time period on when that's going to be finished?
I don't know that it's done yet, but yeah, I think that's definitely going to be part of the process, is looking at those and trying to clarify those, yes.
Okay, so
Aren't they just recommendations?
Well, that you can say that they're recommendations, but I talked to Tommy Foster, who helped make those, and he felt like that they were supposed to comply with the guidelines, that those were guidelines they were guidelines, but they were supposed to be within the guidelines. Is kind of what I got from him and several others that were involved. But there are other interpretations and arguments for that the other way too. Yeah.
Can speak to the role. Their recommendations to the commissioners. The commissioners' rulings are binding to the applicants. So that's where the confusion is on to your question, Steve. Their guidelines are not codes like our zoning code. And so the guidelines are meant to help the commissioners determine what is appropriate for the district. And part of that is to recognize within districts there may be a reason for an exception from something, but ultimately whatever the commissioners decide is binding to the applicant, and they have recourse if they feel like the decision is capricious or arbitrary. They can go to Chancery Court to get the decision reviewed. But so there is still a legal recourse for them. But that's where that confusion is. And I can also say that I spoke with Chad and Emily last week on different terms for the sign. So that conversation is moving forward. We're kind of emailing back and forth just to get on the same page to make sure nothing is misunderstood or misrepresented about our conversation, and then we'll pass that on to Tim and to Brent Keaton as the next step in that process, with the goal that on January 26th there will be the terms and kind of conditions of the sign will be sorted out such that it will be a short discussion and we'll be able to get them across the finish line.
And so that would be across the finish line would be, Katie, and I'm just wanting to be sure that I understand. Across the finish line would be you're going to put the subject to bed at the 26th. So it's either going to be resolved or it's going to go to Chancery Court. Is that what you're saying?
It'll be resolved one way or the other. The commissioners will vote in approval or they will deny. That's. But the point is, as Rachel so eloquently put it, we're moving down the path to get to that resolution. We're in a much better place than we were a month ago working with the Graves, and the conversation is evolving to a place where we can get a resolution. And that's really positive. Okay. It's been great to work with Chad and Emily. We had a really wonderful conversation last week where we were able to kind of get back on the same page and talk about kind of what the commissioner's concerns were, and then of course what's important to the Graves. And we're able to get to a place where we're finding more of a middle ground.
Okay, well that's good. Mr. Pirtle, are you still on the line?
I am.
I have a question just based upon Katie's comment there. Let's say, for instance, in the worst case scenario, the city and the Graves are not able to reach a decision that's suitable for both parties, and so the recourse is going to Chancery Court. But am I off base by saying that if something that is ambiguously worded and left open for interpretation by a committee of individuals is thrown to a court, it's definitely going to be a bench trial. He's going to look at the judge is more than likely going to look at the standards that are put out, and if they're ambiguous, that doesn't bode well for the people that wrote it. Am I wrong about that?
Well, the Chancery Court would not become involved in the issue at all unless the application were denied and the grave selected to pursue a legal remedy of Chancery review.
Yes.
I can't speak for the court, and I wouldn't properly address the merits of the case if it might at some point in time come up on the court's calendar.
And just be sure, I'm not asking for that. I'm just really specifically asking the court for reference would purely go back to the historic zoning guidelines, would they not?
They would, the guidelines are guidelines and they are recommendations, as has previously been mentioned. The discretion of the commissioners, the members of the Historic Zoning Commissioner, are set up in the municipal code that created the entity, and the commissioners are charged with taking into consideration all attendant facts and circumstances, not just one side or the other. It is unfortunate that there isn't some plainer language regarding, to Rachel's point, state-of-the-art signage. But there's already been active discussion about reviewing those guidelines and clarifying and tightening them up. In fact, I was under the impression that it was already informally underway.
One thing, and I don't want to, certainly don't want to step on the legal counsel's toes here, but a lot of this stuff is not because it's arbitrary or fuzzily written. It's because this is an exception. Is that correct, Katie? That this is an exception to something that's already forbidden. Is that correct?
I think that, I don't know, again, the commissioners will decide if it's an exception or not, warrants an exception, I should say, or not. I think, as Rachel put it so, aptly, some people, this technology has evolved. The sign people will tell you that a digital sign is externally lit, but there's a case to be made that it's actually internally lit. And so the technology is, I feel like we've fallen into a crevasse between between what the guidelines are talking about and what this new technology is. And so, I mean, that's the kind of thing where they will see if it warrants an exception, but they will still use the guidelines to base their decision on, and just kind of why this case warrants an exception if they feel that's the case. They still need to decide, base their decision on the guidelines and why this situation is so unique it would warrant an exception from the general character of the district.
So still sounds very subjective.
I don't think the language of the guidelines is subjective. I think it's a matter of, I mean, if they are guidelines, so that in and of itself, the nature of them, it makes them a little bit more, you have to, a little bit more subjective. But the language says no internally lit signs. And so I think that's for some people, these signs are internally lit, and for others, they're not.
Okay.
So in this particular case.
All right. Well, thank all of you for bearing with me for that, because everybody knows, I just got in here. I'm trying to figure my way around, and I do read the local newspaper when I'm extremely bored and have nothing better to do. That's the only reason I would ever read that, because I'm a voracious reader. But anyway, I was following that. So thank you all very much. I'll shut up now. Thank you for bearing with me on that.
Thank you. Anything else to come before the board? Hearing nothing, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for a good meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Wow.
Good night.